welcome to Blog Talk Radio's Atlanta Mix 108. I'm your host, M.L.Ruscsak. I'm here with my very special guest, Sara. Please say your last name so I don't butcher it.
Sure. It's Winokur.
Yeah, I see. I would have butchered that somehow.
Yeah.
But
you would not have been the first one, so don't worry about that.
Well, I try not to if I don't have to. But
Right.
you have now. Not only are you an author, but you have a Ph.D. in molecular genetics.
Genetics.
Am I read?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay. Before we get into the whole author thing, because I'm sure being an author somehow translates into your Ph.D. What is this?
What is a molecular geneticist?
Yes.
Is that what you're asking?
That's what I'm asking.
A molecular geneticist utilizes the study of DNA to inform about all sorts of things. And in our case, we worked with a number of human genetic diseases, trying to identify the genes and mutations that are associated with different diseases, like Huntington's disease and muscular dystrophy. So it's really the analysis of DNA and mutations that are involved in human disease.
Okay. See, that
At
makes
least
sense.
that's what, right, okay.
See, I kind of understand the whole science stuff, but I'm like, okay, I know there's a listener out there that's going to go, what are they talking about? So
exactly.
It's better just to ask the question right away rather than get into a conversation and have people go, okay, what are they talking about today? But
yeah, absolutely.
But how does this translate into your book, Double Blind?
Right. So I was a research geneticist at the University of California for 25 years, working on those different human genetic diseases. And a few years ago, I decided to take a step back. I had some health issues. I'm completely fine now. But at the time, I thought that maybe I would just try something new. And scientists historically haven't been really terribly effective at communicating to the general public just what it is they do. Mm-hmm. So I thought, I've written a lot of scientific articles, but I thought I would write a work of fiction, but incorporate genetics in a way that was sort of fun, actually, and engaging and informative, too.
Good. Well, you're not the first scientist to write a book that's fictional, but It's always fun getting the scientific part of the fictional book correct.
Yes. It's very important to do that.
I mean, you can do anything in fiction, but at the same time, if you have an anchor in science, you need to make sure your science is on point.
Absolutely. I've heard it said that writing fiction actually has to feel truer than nonfiction, because you've got to bring your reader into your world and have it be believable. And
exactly.
So it's very, very important to do that.
So Double Blind is an international crime mystery, sort of, even though it's science-y. Can you tell us a little bit about your research into Iceland and stuff like that?
Sure. Well, let me just, should I just give you the sort of a quick synopsis about the book itself? It's a mystery. It's a mystery thriller, and it is set in Iceland about a forensic geneticist who uses Iceland's national DNA database to solve crimes. So Iceland has a DNA database that has collected DNA from a large percentage of their population. So it's not a criminal DNA database, but it's a collective database that is being utilized to try to identify genes that contribute to a lot of common diseases. So it's a really noble undertaking. At any rate, this is a work of fiction, and I'm having the main character use this DNA database to solve crimes. And one of those crimes relates to the disappearance of her young brother 20 years earlier. And a mysterious poem is containing clues to his whereabouts lands on her desk. And as she begins to look for him, she ends up in a world of trouble. So I thought Iceland, given that it does have this DNA database, and it also is a land of extremes. I mean, we've got icy fjords and volcanoes and remote farmsteads, and yet at the same time, it's got this high-tech character to it. And so I've been there quite a number of times and just sort of fell in love with the country and the culture and the people. They're very proud and resilient people. And when I was there the first time, about 7 years ago, I was privileged enough to go down into what is called the Manuscript Institute. So Iceland has this body of literature called the Icelandic sagas. They're sort of historical fiction, and they were written in the 13th century about the early settlers of Iceland. And so these medieval manuscripts still exist down in this vault. And so I was able to go down into this vault and put on the white gloves and sort of leaf through these medieval manuscripts. So
I wish they would put those on the internet, scan them in somehow. Those would be wonderful to read for the general population, and to be saved that way too.
Yeah. So the Icelandic sagas are, a published literature, and I think Penguin Classics carries them. Ooh. So you can just kind of Google them and find them. They're pretty interesting. They're sort of, they were written in the 13th century about the settlers there in the 9th and 10th centuries. So some of the stories, have been orally carried down over 300 years. So they're a bit of historical fiction. They're not entirely.
Of course,
they're pretty.
We can't have. I mean, we're not going to get historical accurate things from the 1300s, but at the same time, to have that literature still today, it'd be interesting to read it.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. And so I have the protagonist of the book receive these clues about her brother's whereabouts in the form of poems taken from these Icelandic sagas. And so she's got to kind of figure out the clues and fit all the pieces together in order to find him. But as she's doing that, it becomes quite clear that there's at least one person that does not want her to find her brother, and a lot of bad things happen.
Well, of course, it can't be just as easy as follow the clues and get to the end. You have to have the mysteries and the bad things happen in order to advance the story.
Absolutely.
And that's part of the fun.
Yeah, absolutely. For both the reader and the writer, I have to say.
Very true. I mean, we've had books, not so much on the show, but things that I've read personally, go, okay, this is very cut and dry, they're doing this, and then all of a sudden something happens that you're like, wait, where did that come from?
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're also adding in your historical, the Icelandic literature. You're adding in this DNA thing that I've would love to see the U.S. do it at the same time. Maybe they can use Iceland's template to do this.
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, it's not a criminal database. I don't know, maybe it has something like 60% of the people have voluntarily contributed their DNA to this. Mm-hmm. It's really a company that's doing this, and for a good purpose. It is still, however, somewhat controversial because from those DNA profiles of the individuals that have contributed their DNA, they're mm-hmm. able to make conclusions and inferences about their relatives because we all obviously share our DNA, with our parents, siblings, cousins, and so mm-hmm. forth. And so it's somewhat controversial because not everyone wants to, have their DNA, examined. And there can be privacy concerns regarding that.
Well, here's my thought. And we have 23andMe and Ancestry and a few other data banks that do DNA. And I had a relative that we didn't know about do it, and we now have a new relative in the family that isn't new to the family, but we just found them 2 years ago.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, we can look at it from the genetics, which is what you do, and, okay, where's the correlation to cancer? Is it a genetic? Is it environmental? And then we can start having better treatments for cancers or polio or, things that
Absolutely.
come up. That's my whole thing is we can find it in the family and we can localize it to that gene. Then we can have better medical care for everyone.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And it applies to, not only cancers, but to, heart disease and diabetes and all sorts of diseases.
Right. I just put the big one out there because,
it's a very crucial one. But the other issue, is that there is a potential there for employers or insurers to
exploit it,
discriminate against individuals depending upon whether or not they're predisposed or vulnerable to having certain diseases. Now we have a Anti-Discrimination Act in the states that prevents employers and insurers from doing that. Then again, once your DNA is out there in the universe, we don't know really what's going to happen in the future.
Right. I mean, laws change every day.
Yeah, there are two sides of the issue, and that's one thing I tried to address in the book. So it is, it is a mystery thriller, and it's kind of just a fun ride. But it does address some somewhat controversial issues about genetic privacy and DNA databases as well.
Right. There's two sides to every coin. We always say this. And then there's the thin line between the middle, which we call the gray area, where the two sides blend, and we might actually have truth in there somewhere.
Yeah, that's right. And it oftentimes too involves like the greater good for society versus the good on an individual basis. So you're right.
Right.
There's a gray zone.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we live too much in the gray zone, and then we pick a side.
Yes.
We don't go in the gray zone, look at both sides. We just pick a side.
Yeah, which has, really been such an unfortunate aspect of our society, especially lately.
Yes, it is. I mean, we're all in this pandemic right now. Whether we have it, we don't have it, we think we have it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Bless you.
Thank you. We're all in this together right now. And at the same time, we're we're not living in that gray zone. We're living on one side or the other, depending what you want to believe. But it's also giving us time to have authors like you that we can go, oh, they have a book out? Let's go read it.
Yeah, and we could talk about something besides that coronavirus.
Exactly. I actually went on Facebook earlier today. I was like, guys, I need some positive anything on my feed. I don't care what it is. I don't want prayers, because we're all sending prayers to everyone right now.
Yeah.
What I want is positive. Hey, give me a positive motivational saying or something, anything. We need to get this negativity of the virus not front and center.
Right. I think it has brought a sort of sensitivity of individuals, towards one another. I don't know. I find, even when I go to the market, which obviously I'm trying not to do very much, or just taking a walk, people are much more sensitive and will smile at you and say hello maybe more than they would have before.
Oh, yeah, because we're all missing the social interaction. So a smile right now is very contagious. Hey, how's your day? Oh, there's a human out that we can talk to.
We're communicating. Right. Unfortunately, by wearing these masks, we aren't able to see those smiles. But it will pass. This will pass. I expect that, we may not have a vaccine for quite a while, but we will have basically a tamping down of infections and hopefully some antivirals and antibody treatment well before the vaccine. So, my sense is that we are sort of at the apex of this thing, and we shouldn't rush into, reverting to where we were before. But it'll be a slow process, but we will get through it.
Oh, yes. We as a human race, we get through anything.
Yep.
If you look at history itself, we started off as pretty much nothing, and we built everything. We've gone through how many plagues, how many viruses, how many wars. We've always came back. Right,
and developed, innovations as a result of those things. Vaccine development and antibiotics and all sorts of advances in terms of human medicine. So we'll get through it.
Yeah. It's just we'll get through it, and then we'll overcome, and we will advance, because that's the way the circle of history is. We have this dark period followed by a period of light.
Yes. That's right. It's just that I think, I don't know what generation you are, but our generation really hasn't been, exposed or lived through anything like this. And so it's difficult. It was shocking at first, and it's difficult to make these adjustments. But, you've got to look on the bright side that people actually get to spend more time with their families and maybe do some things that they didn't have time to do before. Reading, painting, cooking, things that you can do at home that maybe you didn't have time to do before.
Teaching your children manners.
Yes, that's a good one. Yeah.
I feel so sorry. There's so many kids out there right now, and they're home with their parents all day long right now.
Oh, yeah.
I have a friend that's a teacher. She's like, is with her last year teaching. She's all depressed, but at the same time, she's like, I wonder how those parents are dealing with their kids that I had to deal with for hours on end,
I'm sure they have a renewed appreciation for their friends.
Yes, we all appreciate our teachers very much right now, because we're all homeschooling our kids, and we're like, oh my goodness, how did I ever go through this?
Absolutely.
I mean, there's some that were homeschooled before this, but at the same time, the ones that weren't homeschooled,
which is probably the majority of children.
Exactly.
And it's hard. It's hard for children. It's socially. Social isolation is difficult for any of us, but for children, I think it's particularly difficult.
Yes. My daughter, she's like, I'm so thankful for Facebook because she gets the social interaction with her friends.
Yeah.
But at the same time, she's one of those kids that got to miss her prom.
Yeah.
And she had 3 of them to go to. Her school, because she's in a vocational school, so the vocational school has a prom, and then her boyfriend had a prom. So there's 3 proms. We bought 3 dresses.
Oh, dear.
So yeah, because, you can't wear the same dress to all 3 proms.
Yes.
But at the same time, we can do the social interaction with Facebook. Do a Facebook party or something like that. I think it's called House Party. It's an app that I was just told about. But
called House Party?
Yeah. It's something, and we can have that social interaction that we're missing.
Yep, we have to look for ways to do that, even in these times.
But
I have to say, my mom is 92, and she just learned how to FaceTime, so that's pretty cool. She's on Zoom and FaceTime, and I think she's probably gotten more calls than she did before.
Yeah, because now we're understanding how our elders feel when they're by themselves.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Out of everything that's bad going on, that is the best thing that's happening is children are understanding their elders, the ones that are in nursing homes, the ones that are home by themselves, that live by themselves all day, every day. They don't get phone calls. They don't get visitors. Now we're all in the same boat. Now we understand.
Yeah. And we may not have really taken the time to think of that before. So there are good things that come out of it, as with anything. And it won't go on forever.
Very true. So during this isolation, are you working on a second book?
Yes, I am. I am going to write. I am in the process of writing. It's actually a historical fiction. It is also set in Iceland, and it kind of goes back and forth in time. I'm going to bring some of the same characters forward into this new novel called Ivory Bones. It's going to be a mystery thriller that involves an actual historical event that took place in Iceland in the 1600s, in which Barbary pirates from the North African coast invaded and attacked this island off the southern tip of Iceland and took 400 slaves back to North Africa. And it's going to kind of have a little mystery surrounding that. It'll take place both in Iceland and Morocco and New Amsterdam.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm having fun with that.
That's going to be very interesting to read as soon as you get it done. I love doing research, which makes sense since I was a research scientist for so many years. And I just, when I had that period of reflection, when I did have a health issue, I sort of had to undergo a bit of introspection to really dig deep and, decide what it is that I really love doing. And I just thought, I in addition to wanting to bring science and make it more accessible, I really just loved doing the research. So it's expanded, my world of research into, history and culture and all these other aspects of life, in addition to science. So I enjoy doing the research. That's awesome, though, because with the research, that gives you a creative aspect. and you can come up with other stories as you're doing the research. Because once you do the research once, you already know the information.
Yeah, that's right. I've got to be careful not to get too carried away with the research and actually buckle down and write. That's you can get a little bit carried away by just being sort of fascinated by what you learn in doing the research.
Very true. Oh, I understand that very, very much.
Got to put that on the page.
Mhm. Yeah, it's hard to when you have a analytical mind and you have to analyze and you get so interested in your history, because I do this with World War II when I'm researching.
Mhm.
You get so fascinated on the facts that you forget that you're writing a fictional piece.
Exactly, and hours can go by, and you realize, oh, I've got to get back to putting this into the book. But it's fun. It's certainly couldn't come at a better time with having to self-isolate. It's something creative that I can do.
Mm-hmm.
Keep myself occupied and engaged.
Yeah, we'll have several new books coming out this year because you have a bunch of authors sitting at home doing nothing.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, I'm sure we'll have a flood of them. So many good books out there as it is.
Yeah, out of everything that's going on right now, we need more books to read, right? At the same time, where can our readers find you?
So I have a web page, which is my name, Sarawinokur.com. I also am on Facebook and Instagram, and my book was just published last week, as a matter of fact. And you can find it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, a number of independent bookstores, but of course we can't go into those at the moment. So it's best to find it online, I think, with Barnes & Noble and Amazon.
Now, you are a Kindle, right? So you can be downloaded to Kindle?
Yes.
I only mention this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Only mention this because I know Amazon is having delayed with printed books. So we really want to make sure we get the Kindle version from Amazon, but the printed version right now from Barnes & Nobles.
Yeah, that's one approach. I do, a number of people obviously have bought it, and it hasn't seemed to be terribly late in getting delayed. I mean, it was just published March 31st, and a number of people already have the paperback. So you can order both the paperback or the ebook.
Okay, I just want to make sure because Amazon's been sending out letters to publishers. Being a publisher, I get one of the letters that printed books may have a delay in shipping because they're focusing on essentials before non-essentials.
Right, which is a good thing to be doing.
Yes.
So it's an interesting time to launch a book because, of course, I can't have any, author talks out in the public or book signings or anything of that nature. But on the other hand, as you say, people have more time to read.
Exactly. I mean, we have tons of authors out there. We have more than enough time to read now. So pick up a good book. I mean, this one looks awesome. It has all the elements to have a nice 8-hour day reading.
That's right.
So
yeah, it moves pretty quickly. It's 300 pages. It moves quickly. It's called Double Blind, the Icelandic Manuscript Murders. So if anyone wants to, they can find it on either Amazon or Barnes & Noble, as you say.
And again, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Well, it's a pleasure talking with you. Thank you.
I mean, this went very fast. It always does when I'm talking to a wonderful author. And when you get your next book out, feel free to come back on the show.
I certainly will. Thank you so much.
And have a nice day and happy reading.
Okay, thanks. You too. Take care. Thank you.